Welcome. Today we're going to be taking apart an HP Envy 17U series laptop. This particular model is the 17-U275cl with the 8th gen Core i7 and the GeForce MX 150. The disassembly process for the HP Envy 17U series should be identical to this one. And just keep in mind we're going to be leaving the display complete. We're not going to be taking apart the LCD at this time. And to take apart the chassis, you're going to need a small Torx bit. This is a T5 to remove the bottom case, and then once the bottom case is removed, it'll be just a small Phillips bit. So to get started, we're going to flip the laptop over and remove the bottom case screws. Alright, so now that we have all those visible case screws out, we're going to go to the hidden ones, and for this you're going to need a small tool to remove the back bottom foot, the one that's closest to the hinges. So we're just going to peel this foot up, and we're going to try to get the little adhesive strip to go with it. So this part can be kind of a pain because the foot can sometimes peel up without that adhesive strip, which makes it kind of a pain to kind of glue it back down, because it will kind of peel off of the foot depending on where it separates. So we'll just try to straighten that out. Okay, so you'll see the case screws here that are hidden underneath the foot. So we're going to switch to a small Phillips bit and remove the last few screws underneath the foot. And this Phillips bit is a 2.5, but any small Phillips bit should do. Alright, and once we have those out, we are going to find out which side of this pops up the easiest, and we're going to separate the bottom case from the palm rest along this seam here, so it's kind of, you can see where the bottom case and palm rest meet. So we're going to try to get a flat tool underneath that and then just work our way around to pop it up. Does overlap, so it might be a little bit difficult to get the tool in there at first. It is a pretty tight fit, so we're just gonna keep trying to work this small tool in there. So I found a better gap here at the back corner. You might have a different experience, but wherever you can get that tool in there, just to get the bottom case started off, and then once you have it popped off a little ways, then you should be good to go to finish pulling it around and just releasing the little catches. Okay, so once you have that popped off all the way, then you can just go ahead and remove it. It did kind of make me wonder as I was popping it off if there was something else holding it, because it felt like it was catching somewhere in the middle too. But as long as you have those 3 screws underneath the foot released and all of the Torx screws around the perimeter, just you'll be able to pull it off without having to mess with it too much. Alright, so let's take a look at the inside here. We got easy access to the battery, RAM, fan assembly, hard drive, optical drive, Wi-Fi card. So looks like this laptop is pretty well set up for upgrading or repairing. They definitely made the most common stuff easy to get to, which is always nice to see in a laptop. So the first thing we're going to do is to disconnect the battery, and then we'll go ahead and remove it. So we'll just use our fingers here and wiggle that connector straight out. And then we'll go ahead and remove those Phillips screws that are holding in the battery. And it looks like there are 4 of them. Alright, so once we have those screws out, we can just lift the battery out of the case. Alright, we can go ahead and uninstall the RAM. It's really easy. We just spread those little retainers and remove the RAM sticks out of the slot, like so. Alright, so the hard drive looks like it's just held in with some compressed rubber. And the SATA connector is just a flip-up type retainer, so we're just going to pop up that little retainer there and remove the connector, and then we can just use our finger to pry up on that hard drive. And the hard drive has just little tabs that are kind of poking into the area where the hard drive screws go, so you just pull that caddy free of the hard drive, and the SATA connector is the same. We'll just pull it out of the hard drive. Installation is reverse of that. Okay, so we have the CD drive here. We're going to go ahead and remove that by removing the screws. And then it's just the classic SATA connector for the optical drive. So when we go to remove it, we're just going to pull it laterally out of the case. And once you've cleared that connector, you can lift it up and out. Alright, so we'll take another look. We just have a Wi-Fi card over here, so the antennas just pull straight up on them. And then since we're going to be removing the display, we'll go ahead and free those cables. Alright, so we'll go ahead and remove the fan and heatsink. So for the fan connector, they don't give you a whole lot to grip, but if you can get your fingernails on either side of that connector, and you can just wiggle it out. Alright, so all we're going to need to do now is remove the, looks like a couple fan screws, and then the 8 screws holding on the heatsink here. Removal, you can do it in any order you want, but if you're going to reinstall this heatsink with new thermal paste, follow the numbers that are stamped on the heatsink when you tighten it, and that will allow you to tighten down on that thermal paste evenly. But as far as removal, it doesn't matter. So we'll just go ahead and remove all those screws. Alright, so we got all of the screws removed or loosened, and this model, the fan and heatsink are separate, so you are able to remove the fan for replacement or cleaning without having to remove the heatsink and install a new thermal paste, which is nice. So we've got all of the screws loosened for the heatsink, so we'll just simply pull it up and out of the case. Alright, so we'll go ahead and also remove that Wi-Fi card. It's just one screw, and then we will pull straight out of the slot. Alright, let's give it another quick look over. We'll move to the other side. Looks like we have an in-out board here that we can remove. And it looks like there is a decent sized metal bracket kind of holding it in place. So we'll go ahead and move that tape back so we can get to the last screw there, and then we can remove all of the screws. It looks like it was just the 3 that were holding that on, and it just has the punch through holes for those hinge screws. So we'll remove that bracket, and we're going to go ahead and unplug the in-out board from the motherboard. So same deal, we'll just get that connector with our fingernails and wiggle it out. And then we'll feed that cable out of the little catches. And then same for the ribbon, we're just going to flip up on that retainer, remove the ribbon, and we'll flip that back down. So that looks like the only other things that are attached to the in-out board, so we can finish removing these screws. And then we can gently kind of pull it up and back so those ports will clear the palm rest. And there's a little piece of tape. So there we go. That's how you remove the Ethernet USB board. Alright, so looking, we just have the 2 Wi-Fi antennas sticking out of the display. So we're pretty much done on that side until we want to go ahead and remove the display. On this side, it looks like we're going to need to remove a few pieces of tape. And another bracket. So if you want to remove the LCD, it's just a matter of just unplugging the cables, the 2 Wi-Fi antennas, webcam cable, and LCD cable that are coming out of the display, and then removing the hinge screws. So you don't have to, it doesn't look like you have to remove the motherboard before you remove the display, but we're just kind of gonna do it in that order for this disassembly. So we'll go ahead and get that other metal cover. And now we have access to the DC jack on this side, and we can finish removing the connectors for the LCD. So we're just going to flip up on that connector there, remove the cable, and we'll flip it back down. And then we'll do the same for the whatever the cable's for. And this one's a little different. This one doesn't have really a whole lot to grip. They didn't leave tabs on that connector. So I always hesitate to actually pull on the cable, but maybe we can just do both and just kind of gently pull while we wiggle with what we can grab on that. And then we can get that little connector out. Alright, so we'll go ahead and we're going to remove the motherboard now, so let's disconnect everything that is still connected to the motherboard. So for the DC jack, nice big tab so we can wiggle that out with our fingernails. Then the DC jack just pulls up and out of the case. And whatever this one's for, looks like it might be speakers. And it would probably help to have some kind of small tool to get the inside tab there. Alright, so we'll flip it around and we're going to go ahead and just flip up on these little retainers. All three are the same type, and we're just going to pull those ribbons out. And then it's always a good idea to flip it back down, and it gives it less chance of being broken while you're working on it. Alright, so it looks like we have all of the stuff that's connected to the motherboard, and now we're going to go ahead and remove all of the Phillips head screws. Okay, so looks like it was just a few of them, and the best way to remove a motherboard is very gently and very slowly. So we're just going to start kind of wiggling it. It feels nice and loose, so I know that there's no more Phillips screws. And if you notice on this side, the ports are kind of poking through the palm rest. So as we remove the motherboard, we're going to try to push it out that way as we lift it. And this one's nice and easy, so we'll gently turn it over, make sure there's nothing else plugged into the other side. And that is how you remove the motherboard. Alright, so taking a quick look here, your keyboard is held in by melted plastic rivets, so they did not mean for it to be replaceable. So unless you want to deal with a giant headache, I would buy the palm rest assembly as a whole unit instead of trying to replace your own keyboard, because getting that backing plate to stay in place might be a challenge once all these are broken to remove the keyboard. But the touchpad looks like it's just held in by some Phillips head screws, same with the bottom part. So the touchpad's replaceable, but I would say in this case the keyboard is not. So we're going to leave the speakers attached to the palm rest, and that is pretty much it for the palm rest assembly. And our last step is going to be to remove the LCD assembly from the palm rest. Now, as long as you can unplug these two cables for the webcam and the LCD and the two Wi-Fi antennas, you can remove this display assembly before most of the other stuff are removed. But I'm just going in this particular order. So that's basically all you need to remove is the two cables, two antennas, and then removing the hinge screws will separate the LCD. So what we're going to do, since this LCD has so many screws, we're going to go ahead and remove all but two on each side, and then we're going to open it up, and then we can remove the last four screws. And the reason you want to do it this way is because the LCD on most laptops has to be open all the way for it to clear the palm rest assembly, and we don't want to sit there and have to hold it while we're removing a whole bunch of screws. So we're just going to get down to the last four, and then we can pull the last four out while we're holding it. Alright, so it looks like, yeah, just two more on each side. So we're going to gently open that assembly, and we're going to remove the last four screws while giving it support from underneath with our hand. This will help prevent damaging or breaking the last screws so that we're not putting the whole load of the laptop on them. Okay, and now we can separate the display assembly from the palm rest assembly. Well, looks like this one has a broken screw mount. Another thing you would definitely want to check, since it's an HP, is these plastic mounts where the screws go. are known to be brittle and break. So on this palm rest, it looks like this one right here was broken. And if you still have most of that screw mount intact, you can go ahead and super glue it, or what we like to do is use high strength epoxy. So if you have some epoxy, you can fix that and not have to replace your palm rest. It definitely will, it'll hold if you do it right, but this one's is going to need to be repaired or tossed out since it's got that broken screw connector. But unfortunately, a lot of HPs are the same way. They like to use a lot of plastic screw connectors, so I would definitely check that out if you're going to remove your palm rest. Alright, so as we said before, LCD is going to stay in one piece. If you absolutely need to separate it, you're just going to separate it where the rubber and the back cover meet. So if you get a tool in there, you might be able to start popping it off. I do know they use quite a bit of adhesive to stick these together, which is why a lot of them we do not take apart, because it takes a while and a heat gun and a lot of patience, and then you can still break your LCD, especially if it's an LED. They're just so thin and fragile that a lot of times we prefer just to leave it as one display, and it makes it easier for replacement if you can just replace the whole assembly quick and easy. Alright, so that is how you disassemble an HP Envy 17-U series laptop. And if you liked the video or you found it informative, please like and subscribe. Thank you.